let me tell you about a guy named Derek. Derek is 38 years old. He makes about $72,000 a year, which is pretty close to the median household income in America right now. He's been working since he was 22. That's 16 years of alarm clocks, commutes, office small talk, and performance reviews. 16 years of showing up. And Derek is good at his job. His boss likes him. He gets decent raises every couple of years. He's got a 401k. He contributes to it, not as much as he should, but he does it. He's doing the things you're supposed to do. But here's the part that keeps Derek up at night. He does the math sometimes, late at night when everyone else is asleep, and the numbers don't add up. If he keeps working until 65, that's another 27 years. 27 more years of the same grind. And the math still barely works. Social Security might be there, might not. His 401k balance is okay, but not incredible. And every time he gets a raise, somehow his lifestyle adjusts to match it, and he's not really getting ahead. Derek is not lazy. Derek is not irresponsible. Derek just never got taught the one formula that changes everything. And that formula has a name. It's called the 25x rule, and it comes from one of the most important studies in the history of personal finance. A study done in 1994 that most Americans have never heard of, but that a small, quiet group of people used to retire in their 30s and 40s while the rest of the country kept grinding until 65. Today we're going to walk through exactly what that formula is, what the real numbers look like for an average American household, and how you can use it to figure out your own retirement number, not someday, not vaguely, but with actual math you can write down tonight. Because the scary truth is this: most people have no idea how much money they actually need to retire. They just have a fuzzy feeling that it's probably a lot and probably out of reach. And that fuzzy feeling is what keeps them stuck. The people who get out early, the ones who retire in their 40s, who work because they want to, not because they have to, they didn't have more income than you. Most of them had something better. They had the formula. So let's start at the beginning. In 1994, 3 finance professors at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas sat down to answer a very specific question. If a retired person withdraws money from their investment portfolio every year, what percentage can they safely withdraw without running out of money before they die? They looked at historical stock market data going back decades. They ran the numbers through every combination of stocks and bonds they could think of. And they landed on a number that changed the personal finance world forever. 4%. If you withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year, and your money is invested in a reasonable mix of stocks and bonds, historically your portfolio has survived every 30-year period in modern market history. Market crashes, recessions, inflation spikes, it has held up through all of it. Now let's flip that number around, because this is where the 25x rule is born. If 4% of your portfolio is enough to cover your annual expenses, then your portfolio needs to be 25 times your annual expenses. Why 25? Because 1 divided by 4% is 25. It's just simple math, but most people have never seen it written down this clearly. So if you spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million invested to retire safely. If you spend $60,000 a year, you need $1.5 million. If you spend $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. If you spend $100,000 a year, you need $2.5 million. That's it, that's the formula. Annual expenses multiplied by 25 equals your retirement number. Now here's where most people's brains go sideways. They hear $1 million and they immediately go into panic mode. $1 million sounds impossible. It sounds like something that happens to other people. But stay with me for a second, because that reaction, that immediate shutdown, is exactly what the financial system is counting on. When you believe retirement is impossible, you stay in the workforce longer. You keep paying into systems that benefit from your labor, and you never actually run the math for yourself. So let's run it. The average American household spends about $61,000 a year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's their total expenditure: housing, food, transportation, healthcare, entertainment, everything. So using the 25x rule, the average American household needs roughly $1.5 million to retire. Now $61,000 a year in expenses. That includes some things that might actually go away by the time you retire. Maybe your mortgage is paid off. Maybe your kids are grown and you're not supporting them anymore. Maybe you've downsized. A lot of people find that their actual retirement spending is significantly lower than their working years spending. If you could live comfortably on $45,000 a year in retirement, your number drops to $1.125 million. If you can do it on 50,000, you need 1.25 million. These are real numbers, not magic numbers, not lottery numbers, numbers that a regular person with a regular income can actually reach if they understand the math and start taking it seriously. But here's where it gets interesting, because the question isn't just, what's the number? The question is, how do I actually get there? And this is where the story of Derek gets a lot more hopeful. Let's say Derek is 38. He currently has $80,000 in his 401k, which is honestly pretty typical for his age. According to Vanguard's 2023 How America Saves report, the average 401k balance for someone in their late 30s is around $87,000, so Derek is right in that range. Derek decides he wants to retire at 52. That gives him 14 years. His annual expenses are currently $60,000, so his retirement number is $1.5 million. He currently has $80,000. He needs to get to $1.5 million. That means he needs to accumulate $1.42 million in 14 years. Sounds like a lot. Let's see what the math actually says. If Derek contributes $2,000 a month to his investments, that's $24,000 a year, and his investments grow at an average of 8% annually, which is actually below the historical average of the S&P 500, which has returned roughly 10 to 11% annually over the last century. Then in 14 years, those contributions alone would grow to approximately $550,000. Add his existing $80,000, which at 8% over 14 years becomes about $240,000. That's already around $790,000. Wait, most people also get raises. If Derek's income grows even modestly and he increases his contributions over time, the numbers climb significantly. And here's something people forget: his employer match. If his company matches even 3% of his salary, that's an additional $2,100 a year going into his retirement fund. Over 14 years with compound growth, that's another $50,000 or $60,000 at minimum. We're already within striking distance of that 1.5 million number, and we haven't even talked about tax optimization, side income, or the single biggest lever most people never pull: reducing expenses. Because here's the thing most financial advice gets completely wrong. They talk about retirement as a savings problem when it's actually a gap problem, the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and you can close that gap from two sides. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine you're trying to fill a bathtub. The water coming in is your income. The water draining out is your expenses. Most people are trying to retire by just turning up the faucet, earning more. But if the drain is wide open, it doesn't matter how hard the water is running. The tub barely fills. The smarter move is to do both: turn up the faucet and partially close the drain. Even small reductions in expenses have a massive, disproportionate effect on your retirement timeline. Here's why: when you reduce your annual expenses by $10,000, two things happen simultaneously. First, you have $10,000 more to invest each year. Second, your retirement number just dropped by $250,000. Because your expenses are lower, you need 25 times less to cover them. That's a double impact. Every dollar you don't spend is worth much more than a dollar you earn, because it works in your favor from both directions. This is why people in the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, talk so obsessively about savings rate, not because they're living on rice and beans and suffering, but because they understand the math. A person who saves 10% of their income will take about 37 years to retire. A person who saves 30% will take about 28 years. But a person who saves 50%, they can retire in 17 years, from zero, starting from nothing. With no inheritance, no windfall, no lucky break, just math. A person who saves 75% can retire in 7 years. Now you might be saying, okay, but I can't save 75% of my income, that's insane. And you're right, most people can't. But the point isn't to save 75%. The point is to understand that your savings rate is the most powerful variable in this entire equation. More powerful than your investment returns, more powerful than picking the right stocks. Your savings rate determines your timeline more than almost anything else. And here's the number that should get your attention. The average American saves about 3.8% of their income, according to the Federal Reserve, 3.8%. At that rate, even if everything goes perfectly, you're looking at a retirement in your late 60s if you're lucky. But if you can push that savings rate to 20 or 25%, which is absolutely achievable for a dual-income household or even a disciplined single earner, you're suddenly looking at retiring 15 to 20 years earlier than the average American. Let's bring this back to Derek for a second. Derek does some honest accounting. He looks at where his $60,000 in annual expenses is actually going. Housing takes up about $18,000 a year. That's his mortgage, insurance, and property taxes. Transportation is $10,000, car payment, insurance, gas, food and groceries run about $8,000. Healthcare and insurance another $6,000. And then there's this fuzzy category of everything else, subscriptions, dining out, vacations, random purchases, that somehow adds up to $18,000 a year. That last category is where Derek gets real with himself. He's not extravagant. He doesn't think of himself as a big spender. But when he actually tracks it, he realizes he's spending about $1,500 a month on things that don't really improve his quality of life. Subscriptions he forgot about, restaurants 3 or 4 times a week, an Amazon habit that he'd describe as just stuff I needed if you asked him, but honestly, he wasn't sure he needed most of it. If Derek gets intentional, not ascetic, not miserable, just intentional, and cuts that category from $18,000 a year to $10,000, his annual expenses drop from $60,000 to $52,000. His retirement number just dropped from $1.5 million to $1.3 million, and he freed up $8,000 additional dollars a year to invest. The math compounds from there. It's not just that he reduced his expenses by $8,000. He changed his retirement number and increased his contributions simultaneously. That combination can shave 3 to 5 years off his retirement timeline, without a promotion, without a side hustle, without a single extra dollar of income. Now let's talk about where to actually put the money, because this matters. The 25x rule and the 4% safe withdrawal rate are based on a portfolio invested in the market, not a savings account, not a CD, not a money market fund. The historical data behind the Trinity Study was built on stock and bond portfolios, specifically because stocks are what generate the kind of long-term returns that make the math work. A high-yield savings account earning 4 or 5% right now might feel attractive, and it's great for your emergency fund. But if your entire retirement nest egg is sitting in a savings account, the 4% withdrawal rate doesn't apply to you, because savings account rates change. They go up and they go down with federal policy. In 2020, high-yield savings accounts were paying 0.5%. If you were retired and withdrawing 4% from an account that was only earning 0.5%, you'd be eating into your principal every single year, and within a decade or so, you'd be broke. The S&P 500, by contrast, has never, over any 30-year period in its history, produced a negative return, not through the Great Depression, not through the 2008 financial crisis, not through the dot-com crash. Every single 30-year rolling period has been positive. That's the historical foundation the Trinity Study was built on. So the practical answer for most people is index funds, specifically broad market index funds like a total stock market fund or an S&P 500 index fund, ideally held inside tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k or a Roth IRA. In 2024, you can contribute up to $23,000 per year to a 401k and up to $7,000 to a Roth IRA. If your employer offers a match, that's free money. Take every single penny of it. That match is an instant 100% return on that portion of your money. There is no investment on the planet that guarantees a 100% return on day one. Your employer match does. Now let's have the honest conversation that most finance videos skip. The 25x rule and the 4% withdrawal rate have critics, and some of those criticisms are worth hearing. The original Trinity Study looked at 30-year retirement windows, but if you retire at 45, you might need your money to last 50 years. Some updated research, including work by financial planner Michael Kitzes, suggests that over longer time horizons, a withdrawal rate closer to 3.5% might be more conservative, which would push your retirement number to roughly 28 or 29 times your annual expenses instead of 25. That's a meaningful difference. If your annual expenses are $60,000, the difference between the 25x and 28x multiplier is $180,000 in additional savings. But here's the counterpoint. Most people who retire early don't just sit still and let the clock run. They have part-time income. They do consulting. They start something they care about. Even $10,000 or $15,000 a year in occasional income dramatically extends your portfolio's lifespan because you're not drawing down as heavily in the early years. Wade Pfau, one of the leading researchers in retirement income, has shown that even modest flexible spending adjustments can make a 4% withdrawal rate viable over very long time horizons. The point isn't to find the perfect number. The point is to have a number. Most people floating through their working years have zero idea what their retirement number is. They just vaguely hope it works out, and that vague hope is a terrible retirement strategy. Your number gives you direction, it gives you a finish line, and it transforms retirement from this distant, impossible abstraction into a math problem you're actively solving every month. Here's something else that almost never gets mentioned. The 25x rule isn't just about traditional retirement. It's about freedom. It's about the point at which work becomes optional. You may choose to keep working after you hit your number. Plenty of people do. But there is an enormous psychological difference between showing up at a job because you choose to and showing up because you have no other option. When Derek hits his number, he doesn't have to take abuse from a difficult manager. He doesn't have to stay in a role that stopped challenging him. He doesn't have to suppress his opinions to protect his paycheck. He can negotiate from a position of actual power because he doesn't need the job to survive. That shift, from financial dependency to financial freedom, changes everything about how you move through the world. And it's available to regular people, not just tech entrepreneurs, not just people who got lucky with crypto or real estate in the right decade. Regular people with regular incomes who understood the math and made consistent decisions over a long enough time horizon. This is the part that I really want you to sit with. There are people right now, thousands of them, who make less than Derek, who live in high cost of living cities, who have student loans, who started late, and who are still on track to reach their 25x number before their 50th birthday. They didn't get there through deprivation. They got there through clarity. They knew their number. They knew their savings rate. They made deliberate choices about where their money went, and they let compound interest do the heavy lifting over time. Albert Einstein, or at least someone we like to attribute this to, called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He wasn't being poetic. He was being mathematical. A single dollar invested at 8% for 30 years becomes $10. You didn't earn $10. You earned $9 in interest on $1. Your money made more money while you slept. At that rate of growth, Derek's $80,000 head start becomes over $800,000 over 30 years without him adding a single additional cent. That's the power of time in the market. And it's why starting, even imperfectly, even with small amounts, is so much more important than waiting until you have it all figured out. So let me leave you with the actual homework, not vague advice, real steps you can take this week. First, figure out your annual expenses, not your income, your actual expenses. What did you actually spend last year? Pull up your bank statements and credit card bills and add it up. That number times 25 is your retirement number. Write it down. Second, figure out your current retirement savings. Add up your 401k, your IRA, any brokerage accounts. That's your starting point. Third, figure out how much you're contributing per month. Multiply it by 12. That's your annual contribution. Fourth, use a basic compound interest calculator. There are free ones online, and plug in your starting balance, your annual contribution, and 8% growth. See how many years it takes to hit your retirement number. That exercise will tell you exactly where you stand, not approximately, exactly. And for a lot of people, the answer will be better than they expected, because when you finally do the math, retirement isn't this distant, impossible dream. It's a solvable equation with a specific answer and a specific timeline. Derek did that exercise, and when he saw that 52 was genuinely reachable, not through luck, not through a windfall, but through math, something shifted. He stopped feeling helpless. He stopped drifting. He started making decisions differently, not dramatically, not all at once, but differently. That's what the formula does. It doesn't just tell you how much money you need. It tells you that you have control. And control, real, mathematical, provable control over your financial future, is the most underrated feeling in the world. You now know what most people your age don't. You know the number. You know the formula. You know how it works and why it works and what the math actually says. The only question left is what you do with it.